When crime is a spectacle and fear is sold for entertainment, only one man is dark enough to face the darkness itself. Did Luther manage to stop it? Or did he become the next victim? And this is the plot of the film Luther, The Fallen Son. One night, Callum, an ordinary office boy, receives a mysterious call. The voice on the other end threatens to spread Callum's personal disgrace if he refuses to come to. Caught between fear and threatened honor, Callum decides to go. Upon arriving at the mentioned location, Callum was shocked to see a car with two people lying in a pool of blood. Without thinking, he called emergency services. But suddenly, one of the victims got up and attacked him brutally. The next day, the place is swarmed by police. Only one body has been found. Callum is missing. Detective John Luther and his superior, Martin Schenk, arrive at the scene. Luther senses something is amiss. This is no coincidence. Callum has been set up. Callum's mother, Corinne, panicked and devastated, begs Luther to find her son. Luther promises. But behind his promise, a dark threat begins to infiltrate his life. From afar, a man named David Roby watches coldly. He immediately contacts someone and orders that all dark information about Luther be dug up, to bring him down. The information leaked and went viral. Luther's reputation was destroyed in an instant. Accused of abusing his authority and brutalizing criminals, he was arrested and thrown into prison. There, the inmates greeted him with hatred. Luther was beaten, humiliated, and nearly died in his cell. Meanwhile, Corinne receives a call from Callum, which turns out to be a fake. She arrives at a large house, and finds Callum hanging along with the other victims. As the other guests arrive, a gruesome trap is set off. A fire engulfs the entire room, consuming the hanging body. Corinne sees a masked figure outside the window, David, the killer, smiling with satisfaction. Detective Rain, Luther's replacement, takes over the investigation. He begins to piece together the mystery of the brutality. In prison, Luther receives a letter containing a radio frequency. When he secretly tunes into it, he hears a recording of Callum's voice before he died, sent directly by the killer to psychologically torture him.
At a bus stop.
Luther then gets a visit from Corinne, who comes full of sadness because she is disappointed that Luther could not find her child as promised.
Liar.
When Corinne leaves, it turns out that David is the one who escorts Corinne. Meanwhile, Luther takes the cell phone he hid in his cell and calls the police to speak directly to Rain. Rain asked Luther not to interfere in this case anymore. She even reported Luther for smuggling the cell phone into prison.
Help me, John. And God knows you can't help.
On the other hand, Luther has an idea to escape from prison and calls his acquaintance named Dennis to help him get out of prison. At first, Dennis refuses Luther's request to help him escape from prison. However, after Luther persuades him in a good way, Dennis finally agrees to help. However, while they are talking, the police come and confiscate Luther's cell phone. Then, Luther tried to persuade two officers to let him mingle with the other inmates. However, the officers told him that it was very risky because the other inmates might beat Luther up. Nevertheless, Luther was determined to be transferred to another prison. Suddenly, one of the inmates pretended to want to commit suicide. When the officers wanted to help him, the inmate beat the officers and the riot started. The prisoners who came out of their cells immediately swarmed to Luther's cell and began attacking him with punches and attacks. However, the chaos was finally stopped by this. Luther was then transferred to another prison. As planned, Dennis and his men immediately blocked the car carrying Luther. Without much difficulty, they managed to subdue the police and get Luther out of the car. Elsewhere, David visits his wife who is injured in a fire. The serial killer shows him various news stories about people who have gone missing, which are actually the result of his own actions. Meanwhile, Luther has successfully reached the hideout and he rewards Dennis for helping him. Dennis gives Luther a message to find the serial killer immediately and not hesitate to torture him if necessary. Meanwhile, Luther has started his task. He is on his way to the radio channel he heard earlier. On the other hand, Martin visits the prison and the cell where Luther was previously to look for clues about Luther's whereabouts. Martin also finds a message that Luther previously read, and when Martin listens to it, he is shocked but convinced that Luther is heading to the channel where the recording is broadcasted via FM radio. There, he catches a man named Derek who claims to have been forced by David to spread the recording. With the new lead, Luther and Martin manage to track David's number. David, who is preparing a live streaming murder show, already has his. The police move quickly, but David causes chaos. Some people are killed, some are forced to commit suicide directly. Luther and David end up fighting fiercely in the train tunnel, but David manages to escape after injuring a police officer. Rain then contacted her daughter Anya and told her that she would not be coming home because she still had a lot of work to do. However, when Anya was about to go to the kitchen, she felt someone in her house. It turned out that David was already there and immediately took her away. He kidnapped her and forced Rain to get rid of Luther. Rain agreed to meet Luther, but it turned out that he was secretly working with him. Together, they visited David's wife. The woman finally told her husband's hiding place. However, David did not remain silent. He ordered a corrupt policeman named Archie to kill his wife so that his trail would be lost. But Martin was already on stand. Cornered, Archie chose to inject himself with poison. Meanwhile, Luther and Rain arrive at David's snowy hideout. They find a hanging body that they assume is Anya. Rain is devastated, but the body turns out not to be her daughter.
John?
David appears, attacks Luther from behind and ties him up. David begins his live broadcast. The room is filled with cameras, the dark audience watching his sadistic act. He forces Rain to torture Luther. But Luther turns the tables. He taunts the audience, telling them they are being tracked. The audience panics and starts logging out. As chaos ensues, Luther breaks free, attacks David, and chases him to the car. The car speeds off until it eventually skids into a frozen lake. Luther and David freezes to death. Luther is rescued by the police at the last moment. Rain and Anya manage to survive the flames after fighting desperately against David's men.
Thank you.
From a disgraced detective to an unofficial hero, Luther shows that justice is not always clean, not always lawful, but it still burns in the hearts that refuse to let injustice prevail. Though his physical and emotional wounds remain deep, his sacrifice brings light to the families of the victims left behind. The government, impressed by his courage, makes him an unexpected offer, a chance to rise again, not as a criminal but as a shadow agent. Because in a world like this, sometimes it takes a monster to hunt other monsters. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.